Hey, welcome. We are in a webinar right now, and it is on. We're supposed to see our slides. They'll come up any minute, I assume. There we go. The changing dynamics of electrical steel. My two guests are people that I've talked to before. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Ron, you are the CEO, right, of JFE Shoji Canada, right?
That's correct. Well done.
Okay, I got it all right there. And Marcel Hilgers, you are the managing director or the manager, vice president, I'm sorry, of. When I first read this, I thought this is strange. You're the vice president of customers, markets, and technology, right? At ThyssenKrupp.
That's right, at ThyssenKrupp Electrical Steel. Thank you, Alan.
So customers, markets, and technology. That's just the strange group of things to come together. But first of all, Marcel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Yeah, as said, I'm working for ThyssenKrupp Electrical Steel. Yeah, and in the meantime, I think I'm dedicated to the steel industry. I'm more than 20 years in steel industry, and I worked with a couple of products from carbon steel, stainless steel, and. But the dearest product to me is GOES, grain-oriented electrical steel, which I'm following now in the meantime since more than 10 years or 11 years, in a period from 2005 till 10, and now since 2017 again. And I'm in charge of the sales and technical customer service and marketing public affairs for our company for one product, GOES, producing this in our 3 global factories.
Excellent, thank you. Next up, Ron, give us a little bit of background. We just saw that. Give us a little bit of background about you and JFE Shoji. And you know I struggle with this because the last time we talked, but I'm going to get it before the end of this webinar.
Okay, thanks, Alan. I'm sure you'll get it. Thank you for the introduction. Ron Harper. I'm currently with JFE Shoji in Canada. Our business used to be Cogent Power. Many people knew us with that name for almost 20 years. We were acquired by the large Japanese steel firm JFE back in 2019. I have been in the industry of electrical steel and electrical steel products for almost 30 years, and always in Canada, but serving the North American market for our materials and products, and also but globally connected. This is a very niche product with a handful of producers in the world. So lots of international connections. We have worked and continue to work with every steel mill that's making GO in the world, and happy to be here today.
So when I first when we first put this out, I thought, are these two competitors or are these two collaborators, or are there's some relationship, synergistic relationship that they've got? Explain that a little bit. What is the relationship between JFE Shoji and ThyssenKrupp? Start with you.
I'll start, and then Marcel can add. So I think I would start with collaborators. We have worked very closely with Thyssen for many years on supporting the supply chain and the demand for electrical utilities, with our focus in North America, but also Thyssen has a much wider scope around the world. Our business relationship with Thyssen started with our previous ownership. There was a 2-year period where the parent company of TKES, ThyssenKrupp, was going to merge with our parent company, and it looked like that was going to carry through. So that was some of our early discussions with the team from Thyssen. through that kind of collaboration and process of widening electrical steel supply. But since that time, we have worked quite closely in terms of the supply chain of Thyssen material into finished products in North America. So I think collaborator I would start with, but also I think it's important to know that even though our company JFE Soji is connected with JFE Steel by a common ownership, our business focus on processing electrical steel, not making it. And so we buy from all material suppliers. So our relationship with Thyssen is customer supplier relationship, and collaborator is how I would describe it.
Excellent. Synergistic. I like that. You're working together. Uh, do you have anything else to add to that, Marcel? Is that a good definition of the relationship between the two of you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's not much to add indeed. Yeah. So, but to be clear, JFE Steel, of course, is a competitor to us, has always been. JFE Shoji, as the processor, is a customer to us and can be a competitor in some areas as well. So it's a complex, dynamic world we are living in. So it's as well complex and always very important to manage compliance in all of these discussions. Yeah, but we are used to this in the meantime because it's not an unusual situation. Actually, it may sound like this, but it's something we are dealing with since not only in the last time.
I think that's why you have the customer, your vice president of customer, markets, and technology. It lets you play in a lot of different fields right there. And Ron, as the president, you get to decide whether or not you play with them. But anyway, I'm glad to
Yeah,
have both of you here. We're going to
thank
talk
you.
about a lot of things, but we're going to talk about the general general nature of this transformer steel, because there's a lot going on there. Ron, you and I mentioned an organization, Transformer Manufacturers Association of America, TMAA. You're a member. We are an alliance partner with them. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the issues that they bring up. But anyway, good to see you, gentlemen. Before we get down into transformer steel, you've both been in the industry long enough, and you're smart enough to look at the industry as a whole. What do you see going on? And we're going to start with you on this one, Ron. What do you see going on within the power industry? And focus on primarily, we can focus on global, but let's focus on primarily Europe and UK, and North America. What's going on in our industry that are the things that keep CEOs up at night?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to my mind when you talk about the industry in general, especially if you look at Europe, UK, and North America, uh, is that we're in the supply chain and manufacturing of transformers is in a real significant shift. It's going from what I sometimes talk about, kind of 20 to 30 years of slow decline, because most of our electrical grid in both Europe and North America was produced after the Second World War, and it didn't need to be expanded too much. But now, with the advent of artificial intelligence and data centers demanding so much anticipated electrical energy in the future, and with transportation systems, EV, etc., the demand in both our regions is anticipating to grow so significantly and so quickly that our industry's kind of gone from a market that was stable to slow decline to one that's rapid growth overnight. And that requires a completely different mindset and shift. You need to take a much longer term, a much more strategic approach, a lot of investment to grow 20, 30, 40% in terms of what our demand's going to need. That requires a completely different mindset and approach, both in terms of how you run your own business, but how you actually work with your suppliers, partners, and clients through that. And there's a lot of work that needs to go on to help businesses and leaders figure that out.
Yeah. Marcel, comment on that or any differences in Europe?
No, I think you really cannot, in the world of GOES, distinguish between these different markets. GOES is truly a global business, and I mean it is happening right now. this energy transition is happening everywhere around the globe. It is not only happening in Europe, in North America. Electrification of energy is happening everywhere. It's really this era of electrification of electricity is starting now. And if you think back, we have been talking about the energy transition for many years, in the 2010s and beyond, but nothing was really happening which was boosting our industry. It was this slow decline all the time. But since a couple of years now, this is really happening. You see it. You see projects implemented. You see the demand for transformers really taking a stable way upwards. And I think, and I hope that there are many people here in the call, in the webinar here, who have long industry experience. Remember the years of 2006, 7, 8. There was a boom in our industry, in the transformer industry, in the electrical steel industry. And I always ask myself and the people around me and experts, is there something different right now compared to back then? Is there something which makes us believe that this is more sustainable, this growth? And the opinion of everyone I'm talking to is really, yes, this is different now. It's the energy transition which is happening. So it is not a boom which is going to crash. We have reached this point of no return somehow there.
Where the tipping point is what Malcolm Gladwell will call it, where we can't go back. If this is the tipping point and we are moving forward with the energy transition, what was it back in 2006, 2008? A blip? We just
So I think it was a energy transition, but the challenge was the energy transition was going on in China. So the Chinese demand was so ferocious with very limited production capacity for electrical steel, for example. That was just supporting the electrical transformation in China primarily. That's what happened then. This is an electrical transformation supported by changing societal trends on electrical transportation. And it still boggles my mind how much electrical energy is going into the internet and AI type technologies. It's just almost unbelievable.
I know for those people who came to hear about green and energy and steel, we're going to get there, but everything starts with the market. And Ron, you just hit on it. I'm here with some people who run a gentleman who is the global head of electrical power reliability for CBRE, which is they run more data centers than any other company in the globe. They're a global company, and everybody thinks of them as real estate management, but they run a lot of data centers. And some of the data centers they're running are requiring massive amounts of power, especially if it's AI. I don't know why, but the AI-centered data centers are requiring massive amounts of power. I mean, I think it was Microsoft that just bought 3 Mile Island, a nuclear facility in Pennsylvania, because they want to have power for their. I mean, it's gotten to the point that the demand curve, when you talk about data centers and AI, is like pushed up tremendously. Chip manufacturers here requiring tremendous amounts of power. The EV trends, people say, oh, the EVs have slowed down. No, the rise has slowed down. There's still more EVs sold last quarter than were sold the quarter before or the quarter before. It's just not one company anymore. It's just not Tesla. It's now Tesla and BMW and all of these different companies selling. So when you take the mix out, it looks like, well, there's growth is slowed. Not true. The growth is growing, and that changes everything. Wind and solar and everything that goes on with that. But a lot is changing. Let me switch because I want to go to what we came here to talk about. Electric steel, it has several different things. I appreciate the fact that I know, Ron, that you make products out of grain-oriented steel and amorphous steel. There is an issue here in the United States about using grain-oriented steel or amorphous steel, and the Transformer Manufacturers Association of America is pushing for resolution. I don't know, Marcel, does ThyssenKrupp, do they make both, or are they primarily a grain-oriented steel manufacturer?
We focus solely on GOES, grain-oriented electrical steel.
Okay, so when you get grain-oriented steel and we're having all these issues here, what are the issues, Ron? Because I'm not sure everybody's aware of what they are.
Well, I think it first starts with what's driving the conversation. What's driving the conversation is the desire for more electrical grid efficiency. And the
Right,
question then is how do you actually help make the grid more efficient? And one of the ways to do that is to make the electrical transformer more efficient,
right.
or the transformers in the grid. So the DOE has launched a new efficiency legislation for to be put into place in 2029, and that efficiency legislation will, at today's technology, drive an increase in the usage of amorphous metal, particularly in some styles of transformers. I think nominally most people say that it will move, for distribution transformers, market share for amorphous metal up to somewhere between 20-25%, depending on how OEMs and utilities work out designs. The market, so just one of the reasons that we are such a large processor of amorphous metal today is because the Canadian market has shifted to that level of efficiency standard and no load losses a number of years ago. So the market share in Canada for distribution for amorphous metal is actually quite high. So the real issue is the availability of amorphous metal to support that standard, the investment that needs to go in by producers to support that standard, and how are those investments and agreements going to be put in place, so that we can achieve the desired efficiency outcome, according to DOE in 2029. Now, having said that, there is efforts underway on most, if not all, advanced GO producers to continually make the GO product that they're supplying better so that it comes closer or can meet the DOE standard in the USA. So it's really driven by an increasing efficiency standard and the available core materials that are going to support that standard 3-4 years from now.
Okay.
And the general view is it's going to be a mix of improved GO and amorphous metal. But the question still surfaces then, how is that available? You're pushing the most efficient grain-oriented electrical steel. How much of that is available to the market, and how much amorphous metal is available to the market? Because both of those are pushing the efficiency curve or the performance curve of the material very hard in already an environment that is in very, very high demand. So there needs to be investments, whether you're producing better GO or producing amorphous metal, to be able to support that demand for higher efficient transformers.
Okay, I got it. That's a good one. Marcel, that he just said something that was interesting. More efficient grain GOES. Is ThyssenKrupp working on that? Are you becoming more focused as a company on providing that?
Yes, absolutely, Alan. So we as a GOES manufacturer, we have predominantly three jobs to do. The first thing is we have to make better product. Better product means lower loss material with
Right.
better magnetic performance, but as well noise performance, as bigger transformers are getting closer to where people live. That's one point. The second point is we have to accompany the growth of our customers, because everyone is working at full capacity and
Yeah.
everyone has growth plans. So what to do here? So we have to consider this. And the third job we have to do is we have to do all this production, or we have to change our production methodology into a sustainable way. So decarbonize this. So these three things are on the agenda. But to add on these regulations, we have in Europe here what is called the eco-design regulation of the European Commission of the European Union here. And there is currently a discussion about Tier 3, so the third revision of this. And we are as well participating in the meetings, in the hearings, to give the people our view on what is possible, realistically possible from a manufacturer of GOES perspective. But we are as well providing market data as much as we can from public sources and so on to demystify a little bit on what is available, and as well, bringing in kind of a realism in what can be achieved. The discussion here in Europe is seems to be going in the direction that for the small distribution transformers, the efficiency regulations will not be tightened. They are already very tight. They're using a very, very high quality GOES. Amorphous is not a topic in the discussions. Of course, it is discussed, but people see here that it doesn't make a big difference here. The reason is there's a different landscape of transformers used here, mainly stacked cores, and then, well, a different distribution system. So we assume that the focus here will go to more top grades. We call this top grades, these low loss GOES grades. And by the way, this is happening in many markets, especially in China. We are expecting next year a new, let's call it eco-design regulation coming up, which will consume probably a lot of top grades in China again.
We're going to get to China in a minute, but we're going to do the reverse. China sending transformers in here, and you're talking about growth in China. I do have to go back. We got a great question, but it was about something that came up before, and before we miss it, I want to go back there. The 2006, 2008 that you talked about, the demand, a lot of what happened, I think, to either stand it then, was we had a major global financial crisis, a meltdown. Suddenly it was a demand curve issue that kind of, and then we had another one in 2019, 20. I've already forgotten the dates. It was called COVID, and we had another global problem. Do you think the industry today is taking into account, as everybody's adding production and growing, are we taking into account that the next or a possible, whatever it is, disruption is going to affect what you're doing, what the growth that you're doing, what you're doing in the marketplace? Are people cautious about that, or is like full bore ahead, whatever happened then is not going to happen again? So we had a financial crisis, and then we had a pandemic. We don't know if there is another anything, what it is. Are we prepared?
If I may, so what we have analyzed and what we are seeing is that the consumption of GOES, the CAGR, the growth, is somehow deconnecting from the gross domestic products or other indicators. So this is the energy transition, actually. So we have to transform the system no matter what the economy is doing. We have not seen a slowdown, for example, over COVID, not really, in our industry. So it's still work going on. But to come to your point, are we prepared for disruption? One topic, one keyword is coming up more and more and more in my discussions with customers, and by the way, with their customers, with transmission system operators, utilities, and so on. It's resilience. So are we prepared in our supply chains, from raw material over core and lamination manufacturers to transformer makers, for global disruptions? And I see much more trade disruptions, global crisis, wars, and so on. This is what's really going on, where we should be concerned of.
Okay. Anything to add, Ron? I mean,
I think I would agree with Marcel that the industry and just the clean electrical energy transformation we're going through has kind of decoupled us from general economic cycles. And I would agree completely that what the two main issues that I think most people are wrestling with, one is building resilience in their supply chain, and second, figuring how to invest to grow. Some of the things, there is obstacles to investment, especially in the Western markets like Europe and North America. And some of those obstacles have been in high interest rates of late. And the other big challenge, we're not talking about small growth here. We're talking about very large, double-digit growth in terms of the whole demand for electrical equipment and transformers. And it's trying to get the entire supply chain to grow at the same pace is very, very difficult. So let's say in 5, 7 years, we need to increase the output of power transformers by 50%. A power transformer has hundreds of components. If all of those suppliers don't grow at the rate the OEM does, then it's a bottleneck to growth. So um, it is a little bit, as you said, full steam ahead, but it's full steam ahead where you have to work closely with your partners to make sure everyone's growing at the same pace and same time and investing at the same pace and same time. And that can be a really big challenge.
I know one of the big things that supplier growth is bushings. It's harder and harder. You used to be able to get bushings in 6 weeks to 8 months. Now they're 3, 4 years out, especially specialty bushings, which it has impacted because I think 52% of failures in the United States are bushing related failures. Well, if you have a transformer that you got to keep running because you can't get a new one for 2 to 3 years, and you need to replace a bushing. Well, if you can't get a replacement bushing for 3 to 4 years, that transformer is out. You can't operate without a bushing, and so it's creating a lot of problems in terms of supply chain for existing transformers, for existing assets, and others. We mentioned something, Marcel. You brought it up, and I want to go there. Decarbonization is a big thing. I know ThyssenKrupp has made a significant, I wouldn't just say investment. I think you've made a significant commitment to decarbonize. And I mentioned to somebody something about that back when we did something a couple of years ago. And they said, there's no way that a steel company is ever going to think about it. They need too much power that they're going to use anything they can to talk a little bit about that commitment from ThyssenKrupp and where you are with it now.
Mm. Alan, yes, it's a commitment, absolutely. But overall, it's do or die anyway. So
Yeah.
we have to decarbonize. Otherwise, nobody wants us to be producing in Europe anymore. Yeah. And anyway, the whole industry has to decarbonize. So I think we all agree in the long term on this question. The question is, at what time do we commit, and how do we then bring this on the road? Yeah. So what are we doing is we are currently in the process of building the first direct reduction plant to make virgin iron, not with coal anymore, but with hydrogen, green hydrogen in the future. So the construction site is currently operative. So we will have this first direct reduction plant in our mother company steel mill in Duisburg up and running in the year 2028. And from this day onwards, we will have this material, this direct reduced iron made with first natural gas and then comes hydrogen available.
And a green hydrogen. So you're using wind and solar hydrolysis, and then you're making green hydrogen and using it that way. Is that where you're doing?
Yes, we are not making the hydrogen ourselves, so we are sourcing it. So there's a pipeline network currently constructed, and it's not too far away anymore. And we are right now engaging in negotiations with big energy companies, mainly on the hydrogen supply contracts. We are solving with this as well this chicken and egg issue, because there is no availability of green hydrogen nowhere really in the world for a big off-taker available. And the energy companies would not make any investment if there is not the guarantee to have a big off-taker. So ThyssenKrupp has been as well subsidized in being the first big off-taker. So this means the subsidies are actually connected to the mandatory use of green hydrogen in the future. So it's about empowering as well this green hydrogen economy.
Ron, let's switch to North America, because I'm heavily involved in an organization that is heavily involved in hydrogen. And we have a joke, and we started this, I think it was 20 years ago. We said, green hydrogen is the future of the power industry, and it always will be, which, it will always be the future. I think we said that 20 years ago. I think we're still saying it today. But what's going on in North America as it relates to green hydrogen, if anything, or hydrogen for a fuel
Well,
source?
I think I'm not an expert to talk about green hydrogen, but it's in the energy transformation that we're making and to clean energy sources, especially on large users like steel manufacturing. and other large industrial consumers of energy, liquid hydrogen is an absolute necessity because you just cannot generate enough material or you can't generate enough energy by using electricity alone to do that. So in terms of its impact on geo and electrical steel, producers in North America, Europe, and around the world need to spend trillions of dollars to be able to achieve the clean energy targets they need to. And in the end, we're working very closely with our suppliers and partners like Thyssen to make sure that we're advocating for those investments for clean energy for GO, because without end users investing and providing the means for that, producers are never going to be able to convert to green electrical steel. At the end, that's going to have to be paid for by end users in those investments, and we're working very hard to promote green steel and the Blue Mint product that Thyssen is making available to the market.
Okay, excellent. Was something we talked about originally, and I asked what was the relationship between the two. But the first word both of you used was collaboration. You were collaborators. I want you to talk about how two companies, two global companies, two recognized companies in the marketplace, one with a parent who's a competitor of the one who's the supplier, kind of a strange relationship. What are the most important principles that you think you need to apply in this collaboration? What made it work? And I'm going to have you each do one until we run out of them. But Marcel, start with this. What do you think the most important collaborative principle was?
Shared values.
Shared values. Ooh, I like that. I like that. And the value not being make more money, right? The value had to be a commitment to something bigger than yourself. Is that a fair way to
Exactly.
say it? Okay. Ron, shared values.
I would add, that would have been the first one I gave.
Oh,
The
yeah.
second one, I think needs to be open dialogue.
Okay. Open dialogue, open, honest communications. Marcel, speak about that. Would that have been your number two?
Um, it's a very good number two. So overall, for a collaborative atmosphere or collaborative way of working here, it needs to have the same passion for driving value for the end customer in the end. Yeah. So what we do have, and collaboration only makes sense if we are creating value for the transformer maker, for the OEM and their customers in the end.
Okay, that's a very specific one.
And I think if I can just add to that point, excuse me, it's when we talk about value, we're not just talking about our business's financial value or Thyssen's financial value. We're talking about creating value through the entire supply chain to the utilities, to the end users, to our OEMs, and really to the electrical consumer. And as long as we stay focused on that as our primary mission, it tends to solve a lot of the problems. But combine that with open communication and a common mission, I think those are really the big recipes. But we don't always agree, and we need to be open to work through those issues. And I think that's also a part of it. Is you need to have the commitment to work together to find a resolution to challenges or conflicts that you have.
Excellent. I was going to ask I'm going to go back around to this because what are the barriers that you all, as you were doing this, and you're not allowed to say, well, we didn't have common values and we didn't have open communication. What were some of the barriers and challenges in working together that you saw that you can kind of help other people who are trying to collaborate with their suppliers or collaborate with their customers in a way that they're trying to bring something of value to it? You're actually bringing it to society. You're not just bringing it to the transformer manufacturers. You're bringing it to their customers, society. So what were some of the challenges along the way? And you're not allowed to talk bad about each other, right? You can't say, well, if Marcel had just done this, or if Ron had just said this. No. Ron, start with you. What was the challenge you
I
faced?
think there's the couple things that come to mind first that are your question. I think was what disables collaboration.
Yes.
I think the first thing that disables collaboration is self-interest. So if I'm more interested or only interested in my what I need or what my business needs or what my finances are, and I don't care about Marcel and Tissen's financial health, then that's a big disabler to collaboration. So self-interest, I would say, is the first one. I think the second one, if I can use a second one equal to that, is when you negotiate terms, prices, whatever. If you play one supplier against another in that supply chain, that also can be a disabler to collaboration.
All right. Marcel?
Yeah, I can only agree to what Ron is saying. And Ron said something earlier as well. So it's this growth we have to accompany together. So we are coming out of a decade and more of making losses actually in this industry. Transformer OEMs, steel makers, or GOES producers, all of this. So we were coming really out of a miserable time. Now it's time to grow together, and we all somehow forgot how to grow and what does it mean. And especially as we are now coming into an area or into an era where there is enormous growth ahead. We can already anticipate that there will be supply chain issues along the way. The ones Ron mentioned, somewhere in the chain there's a missing link, but as well on the GOES, I give you my perspective as a producer, and all is based on public data here. So at this moment, there's global installed capacity of GOES of around 4 million tons. And we are seeing that nearly all GOES makers are producing at full capacity. So transformer makers are operating at, in many cases, full capacity, with the exception of China and some in Southeast Asia. But there is huge investments coming up. So I do not think that we will have sufficient GOES in the market over a certain period of time. If we look at the projected increase in investments in the grid globally, especially in North America and Europe, then the like-to-like comparison is that by the year 2050, we need more than 9 million tons of GOES in the market. So who is doing investments right now? It is very, very slim, and it's a very expensive thing, and know-how needs to be there. So talking about what makes it challenging is let's stop the old way of doing business and competing. Let's rather think strategically into the future and how to create these things, resilient supply chains, a sustainable supply chain, having the top grades in place. That is what we have to talk about.
Resilient supply chain is one of the things that in North America, we are, especially in the United States, and it doesn't matter who will be president. Everybody agrees on this. We needed to de-China-ize our supply chain because COVID taught us something. COVID was a real eye-opener in terms of getting supplies. So chip makers, everybody is doing that, particularly transformers. We no longer bring as many transformers in, and if any, that we from China. The U.S. government kind of put a kibosh on that for a number of reasons. And as a result of it, that's kind of a false demand curve push. Suddenly, demand went way up just simply because supply from China went away, right? And you said something. Everybody is making investments, and that's true. Every transformer manufacturer I know is either expanding plants or building a new plant, or Virginia Transformer opened a plant in Chihuahua, Mexico. The day it opened, it was sold out. The day it opened, they had backlog for 2 years. And so consequently, they're all scrambling to say, hey, we're trying to make as much as we can to meet demand. Then that comes to both of you. That comes to, we need more steel. We need more high efficiency GO. That comes to you, Ron. We need more component parts made out of this steel. So ultimately, you're the linchpin. You both have a big role to play as the linchpin in that. So I love the idea that it's 4 million tons, and you're saying we're going to probably go to 9 million tons. How are we going to do that? I mean, what has to happen for that to happen? I'll start with
Well, I
you,
think
Marcy.
if I can
Or,
start,
yeah,
this is both from mill production of geo and processing capability. It's This is where I think collaboration is so important, and I don't think it's just industry collaboration. I think there needs to be leadership from government entities to set the path forward for the transition to clean energy technology. Otherwise, the investments are just going to be too slow. Marcel talked about that now. We have 4 million tons of geo produced today. And really, outside of potential Chinese additional investment from existing producers, the only investment that is the production investment going on right now is JFE Steel and JSW in India, and that's really mostly intended for the Indian market. So if you look at that, there isn't really enough on that's being considered today for investment on geo in Europe, North America, et cetera. And why is that not happening? It's not happening because it's not needed today. It's not happening because is there really a clear vision 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that if I was going to spend $1 billion to invest a couple 100,000-ton geo production facility, is the path clear enough for me to make that investment worthwhile? And I just don't think there's enough leadership to make that kind of long-term investment clear. We're all owned by private companies that our shareholders expect us to make a return on the investments they make, and they don't expect a return sometime in the future. They expect a return when that asset's put into place. And this is the challenge that I think both Marcel and I have been talking about industry growth. How do we grow the entire supply chain of electrical steel, other components for transformers, the capacity to produce power and distribution transformers, the ability to install those transformers? How do we grow that at the pace that the electrical demand requires, and that the path that we're on? How do we grow those with sensible investments from all the players in the supply chain, so that we're satisfying the demand in the future and satisfying our shareholders that we're making good business decisions and investments?
so governments have to get involved if they're gonna, and we get involved in the power, in the wind and solar. I mean, there are incentives that people could say, hey, I'm going to produce a wind plant or a solar farm. And there was some level of incentive to make sure that it worked, that I would get a return on my investment. So, and that's a hard one to do because right now it's not happening. The government is incenting green energy, green production, not necessarily grain oriented steel. And that's a shame. We're going to get to the point where I'd like both of you to share a little bit about your companies and what's going on. But we're going to take a couple of questions if you don't mind. And the first question is it's related to backlog. Okay, so I don't know how you're going to share this, but if transformer manufacturers' backlogs have gotten, and I'm talking, we know this is true in Europe and North America. I assume it's true everywhere. But if transformer manufacturer backlog has gotten out to 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years, depending on the type of transformer, and you have utilities particularly buying slots at prices prevailing. So I want you to make 10 of these units in 2028, and I can't give you the price right now, but I will tell you it's price prevailing without skyrocketing it. But if my prices go up, your prices are going to go up. And I can't give you today's price for a product that you're buying a slot for 10 years. Does that make sense? That's what's happening. What is happening with you? Are transformer manufacturers buying slots from you and saying, "Hey, look, we've got we got a slot from XYZ utility, and we're going to produce 100 power transformers them in 2008, and we're going to need this much steel from you. Can we get a slot from you?" Is that what's happening? Marcel, start with you. You're smiling.
Yeah, yeah, because you are touching exactly the topic I wanted to add on the previous question. So what is needed is awareness from the end users as well, so the utilities, that there is an issue in their supply chain already medium term, midterm, and then there is a lack of commitment here. So let me give you the idea how this works. Yes, transformer makers are selling for 2028 slots and so on. So they have a commitment for this year. Yeah. The steel industry, the GOS industry, is typically in the market selling based on quarterly, half year, or sometimes annual contracts. So there is no commitment in the long run. Now it's happening for the first time, at least that have seen that for all my years in the industry, that the end users, the utilities, are actually coming to us and communicating with us. How can we make sure that our suppliers, the transformer makers, have enough of your steel, and then this comes on top, the sustainable version of your steel available in the year 2028. They are now getting aware about this, but it's just in the starting phase, and there are no real concepts about this. I can tell you we do have a couple of projects with transformer makers where we have commitments for certain projects, but on this green steel, we call it our blue mint steel. So it's starting. I see a change in the market, but there needs to be much more change in as well to trigger investments.
So for utilities who are listening, you know what? It's communication, the very same thing that you are giving to a transformer manufacturer, which is a guaranteed slot. They need to give to somebody and say, "Hey, you need," and that's true. And I do know it's true. It's the same in bushings industry. Used to be you could get bushings in 6 months. It's 4 years now. You better make sure that your transformers that you've ordered for 2028, that the bushings that they need, the radiators that they need, the fans that they need are there in supply. Ron, anything to add to that in the idea of what you're seeing and what you would advise for the transformer manufacturers to support what the utilities are doing?
No, I think our experience is somewhat similar to Marcel's. So we look at we have we have two different I would lump two different ideas from different companies that we're dealing with and clients. Some are longer term and are working with us to assure their long term supply, so that we can go back to companies like Thyssen and other geo producers and say, here's our targeted production for the next 3 years, 5 years to build the capacity of this business. And so we can secure that supply chain a little along the line. It's not like securing production slots per se, but it's actually kind of um, securing a supply chain so that we can go back to mills and also our own production capacity and make that reservation. We do that through formal longer term supply agreements. But as Marcel's experience suggested, that is not, uh, there's insufficient numbers of those. A lot of people, as we've been talking about, transitioning from the old way to the new way, more strategic, are still kind of looking at 3 month, 6 month, maybe 12-month agreements between product and price agreements that aren't so long-term focused. We're trying to get them to look more long-term so that we can secure that allocation. But I think to what I have not heard of anybody in North America from the utility going back through the supply chain, hey, uh, confirm that you have enough geo or enough of this or enough of that. But I think there needs to be a lot more of that, because that will then raise more awareness on where shortages may be emerging. I spoke to the head of procurement of one of our larger clients recently, and I asked him, what is it that you're concerned about on the supply chain to support your growth plans? And his answer was everything. He's mainly concerned about copper and
Yeah.
electrical steel, but he's
Yeah.
concerned about everything because we need the supply chain to grow at the rate we're growing, and we need to make those reassurances. So I think our experience is similar. There's a lot more work that needs to be done to build that reassurance that investments are going to be supported in the future.
Well, I
And
know
Ron
when
and
we,
Helen,
so,
just to add on this, it's already getting reality. So we have customers here in Europe, transformer makers, who are getting audited by their customers on their supply chain for electrical steel. So it's happening, and they're coming as well to us to. So there's a consequential audit then. Has never happened before, so it's starting.
so what I'm going to do is we're going to excerpt part of this, and it's going to be a cry to the North American utilities to say you need to start auditing your transformer suppliers to make sure they have the right supply chain, and we're going to use your words in order to convince them of doing that, because that's what we're here to do, educate the marketplace. That's excellent, because if we do that, and there are gaps, and you know there are going to be gaps. If you're going to go from 4 million tons to 9 million tons, you're going to know that long before 2008. The worst thing we can do is suddenly say, oh my gosh, everything slows down because we just don't have the production capacity. That is never a good situation. That always leads to, it's the haves and the have-nots. And the have-nots, right now, you know who the have-nots are? They are the data centers, and they are industrial. Because the industrial people didn't have the capacity to go buy slots. They didn't know they needed to, and they didn't. But their transformers are failing too. If you try to run a steel company, right, you've got a lot of transformers. You've got transformers that power your facility. If you're a refinery, if you're in mining, you got a lot of transformers. If you can't get transformers, and guess what? Your slots are coming in 2009, 2010 because you didn't act in time. The utilities did. They've got to keep their current transformers operating. So it's everything is kind of a cycle, and I hate to see it when plants go down because somebody didn't do their homework. I want to switch to something now because you guys have done an incredibly good job. Thank you so much. We have a few more questions, but they are kind of, I think, around the area that you've answered. But I want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about your companies, about what's going on at ThyssenKrupp, what's going on at JFE Soji. I got that right. And kind of the short term and longer term, because we've talked about the industry and we've talked about the problems. Let's talk about specifically ThyssenKrupp. You've got some slides I know that we're going to show. Yeah, walk through those with us if you wouldn't mind. There you go.
Well, what's happening in this is the general description of ThyssenKrupp here. So, but I would like to maybe move the attention away from this slide here. So let's really focus on the electrical steel, on the GOES business here. So as I said at the beginning, our key focus is really on doing our homework. So first of all, working on making better GOES, more top grades. For the experts here on the call, we are focusing on producing top grades in thin thicknesses such as 0.2, 0.23 millimeter. You can find all this in the web. And we will continue to do so. So that's our commitment. And the second thing, really the biggest driver, is this green transformation we are in. So it is not only our aim, it is clearly our commitment here to offer to the market the green product. And what is driving us then, and me personally as well, a lot in my time, is how to bring it to the market, how to inform the market about these green products. Working on, for example, information on standardization, on green lead market development. So this is clearly driving us right now next to the product development and doing our basic homework on the product itself.
Okay. Ron?
Yeah, like Marcel, I don't need the slides that you guys have available to you because they're just general information. JFE, the JFE organization is extremely committed to electrical infrastructure investment, electrification, the expansion of our grid. JFE's, especially the electrical steel and electrical steel products business, focuses on the two main parts of electrical steel, grain-oriented and non-oriented electrical steel. And so I would say there's kind of four key messages that our business is focusing on. First, we're seeking to invest in those areas where uh, uh, sustainable, supported growth can happen, where we can build a long-term relationship with clients and the market in general, and build that security. And I think North America and Europe are a big part of that. Our kind of second thought on that is to build resilience with our market and our clients and where we choose to invest, so that we can expand and strengthen the capacity, because we do really believe in the pursuit, the net zero 2050 ambition, both in terms of clean production of green electrical steel and the role of the expanding electrical grid in that. So, we play an important role in making those investments and building resilience to the strategic clients and markets that we have with that. The third part is really kind of what we're doing today. We're trying to be an influencer and a leader to share the message. And I think your point earlier is well taken, that the end users in this, whether they're society in general, individuals, utilities, governments, et cetera, need to look deeper into the supply chains that are going to support this clean energy future, and make sure we've got all the things in place, not just look at what the next step in the process is. And we really need to understand better where the constraints are to build the electrified or the transformed electrical energy that we wish to create. And the last thing that I would say we're working very hard. We use the word collaboration a lot today. We're working hard to work with people to build this growth mindset and build a collaborative spirit, and figure out new ways of finding value, and even finding ways of competing in such a high growth market, that we're not slowing down because we're trying to one up each other, or trying to compete in a way that's going to slow down the growth. So it's really about trying to find the path forward with growth, to support those investments, to support the clean energy transformation that is going to be so important to our society and really our grandchildren.
Excellent. I have a grandchild now, so I'm with you on that. We're going to end with this one thing. I was doing a talk, and I just read a report that the literacy rate globally, the global literacy rate, is at an all-time high. More people can read today than have ever been able to read in the history of the world, right? And they attributed it to one thing, and it's what we do. It's the light bulb. When you can light something up, whether it be a school or it be a room or whatever, if you can light something up, then you can read. You can see the paper. You can see the book. And I thought about that, and I thought, we're not the power industry. The electric power industry is not the biggest in North America. We are dwarfed by the beer and wine industry, right? We're a $140 billion industry, and beer and wine is $1.7 trillion, right? So we're not the biggest, but without the switch turning on, without power, nothing works. So society as a whole moves forward when every one of us does our work. I can't thank you enough, because Marcel from ThyssenKrupp, I love what you all are doing. You're one of our champions. And Ron, JFE Soji has been a partner. We've tried to tell your story many times, and I really appreciate that. I would consider both of you rock stars of our industry. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan. That's a nice compliment.
Yeah, you can tell. I'll get you a T-shirt. Rock stars of the
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen, both. Okay, and this has been an APC Media production. Thank you for joining us.